Welcome to Crying Inside, where every family story matters. This is a space where we listen together, cry together, and understand the silent pains behind the smiles. If this is your first time here, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we bring you emotional family stories and revenge stories, tales that not only touch the heart, but also carry deep life lessons. Thank you for joining Crying Inside, because sometimes just one story can change how we see love and inner strength. Have you ever experienced a moment when your family crosses your boundaries so deeply it shakes your strongest beliefs? One decision they make can destroy everything you've worked hard to build, leaving you hurt, angry, and lost. Today, we're about to step into a story like that, a family story that seems ordinary but hides betrayal, favoritism, and unexpected twists. This story will bring tears, twist your heart, and make you wonder, if this happened to you, what would you do? I'm Isabella, 29 years old, born and raised in Manila. After 3 weeks working in Singapore, I came home with a special excitement. Not just because I wanted to see my family after being away, but more importantly, I was eager to touch the old jeepney that Lolo left me. It's more than just a vehicle. To me, it's memories, blood, the very soul of our family. The taxi stopped in front of the house. I pulled my suitcase and stepped out, my heart fluttering. Happiness spread through me, thinking about opening the garage and seeing the shiny red jeepney still there, peaceful as always. But when the garage door swung open, my heart felt crushed. Nothing but a cold emptiness inside. The jeepney was gone. I froze, my throat tightening. So many memories rushed back. The nights I worked myself to exhaustion, saving every penny to buy and fix it. The afternoons sitting with Lolo as he told stories about how the jeepney once carried the whole family to a fiesta in Cebu. Everything suddenly turned into an empty void in an instant. Before I could even gather my thoughts, Mom stepped out of the kitchen, holding a dish towel, her face a mix of pride and smugness. She looked straight at me and said something I will never forget. "Thanks to your Jeep, child. Because of that vehicle, your sister is living the best life." My ears went deaf. I couldn't believe what I just heard. My heart raced, and my legs felt like they were glued to the tile floor. Every word from Mom cut deep like a knife. It turned out that my jeepney, the pride and effort of a long journey, had been sold just to fund a lavish trip for Clarice, my sister who's always been spoiled since childhood. I forced out a bitter, awkward laugh, but immediately Mom glared at me and snapped. "What are you laughing at, Isabella? Don't you feel happy that your sister is happy?" At that moment, I felt like I was falling into a deep abyss. The last bit of trust I had in my family suddenly vanished. I stood there, unable to say a word. In my head, only one question echoed loudly, like the drums during a fiesta, relentless and heavy. If your parents dared to sell the only treasure you had kept for years just to satisfy the fleeting pleasure of a selfish sibling, what would you do? Please leave your answer in the comments. I want to know, if you were in my shoes, would you choose to forgive or confront? My name is Isabella. I was born in a working-class neighborhood in Manila, but my childhood is tied to Cebu, where my grandfather Ernesto lived his whole life. He was a skilled mechanic, known throughout the village for his golden hands. To me, Grandpa wasn't just a grandfather, but my first teacher, the only one who understood my strange passion for machines. When I was a kid, while other children ran around outside or gathered to sing karaoke, I stayed in Grandpa's small garage. I loved hearing the engine roar, loved watching Grandpa's aged hands twist bolts, change oil, adjust every detail. For him, jeepneys weren't just vehicles to carry people through narrow streets. They are the soul of the Philippines, the breath of every barrio, the symbol of resilience. Grandpa often told me, "Anik, a jeepney is more than just steel and metal. It carries stories, journeys, the laughter and tears of many families." I believe that, and from the very first day I sat in Grandpa's red jeepney, I silently promised myself that one day I'd have one just like it, to keep the memories and love he gave me. But while Lolo trusted me, my parents never really understood. To them, I was always the different daughter, unlike the other kids my age. Mom often sighed when she saw me covered in grease instead of wearing a pretty dress like my sister Clarice. Dad stayed quiet, but his disappointed looks hurt me many times. Clarice was different. Since she was little, she was treated like the family's treasure. When Clarice wanted ballet classes, Mom and Dad immediately agreed and paid for the expensive lessons. When she wanted to learn piano, a good teacher came right to the house. At her birthday, Clarice had a big party with a multi-tiered cake and a house full of friends. My birthday, on the other hand, was just a small cake, sometimes only a quick wish. When Clarice graduated high school, my parents gave her a trip to Boracay with friends. But when I finished my college exams, my reward was just reminders not to disappoint Lolo. Of course, I love Clarice. She deserved to be loved. But that long-lasting favoritism left a crack in my heart that's hard to heal. I grew up with comparisons, always feeling the need to prove my worth. I chose to study finance and got a job at a big company in Makati. Every day, I worked from early morning until late at night, averaging over 70 hours a week. Friends called me crazy because all I cared about was work and saving money. But they didn't understand that every peso I saved was for one goal: to own an old jeepney like Grandpa's. Those years, I gave up a lot. I didn't travel, didn't buy designer clothes, didn't party like my coworkers. I lived simply, ate office lunches, and saved every little bit. And then after 5 years, the dream came true. I found a rare vintage jeepney that needed restoration, but the moment I saw it, I knew this was fate. During that journey, I met Miguel. We met at a vintage car festival in Quezon City. He's also a car enthusiast. But what touched me was that he never laughed at or looked down on my passion. Miguel always said, "Isabella, not everyone understands, but I do. For you, the jeepney isn't just a vehicle, it's the heart." Having a man who saw that in me was truly a blessing. Even though my family never fully agreed with my lifestyle, I still believe the jeepney is proof of my resilience. It's the last connection I have with Grandpa, a symbol of silent sweat and pain. We Filipinos are always tied together by family: Sunday Mass, town fiestas with colorful flags, and tables full of food. But beneath all that noise, sometimes there are feelings that never get heard. Like me, a daughter forgotten in family gatherings, only finding comfort behind the worn-out wheel Grandpa left me. And from that foundation, the story I'm about to tell you begins. A story about love, betrayal, and the thin line between what we call family and personal possession. After years of hard work in Makati, I finally got the most important news of my career. My boss called me in and told me the company decided to send me to Singapore for 3 weeks to join an international collaboration project. For anyone else, it was just a business trip. But for me, it was a golden opportunity, a turning point to prove that all those years of sacrifice weren't in vain. Mixed feelings of joy and worry. Because as soon as I heard 3 weeks, I immediately thought of the vintage jeepney. Leaving it alone in my cramped Manila apartment wasn't safe. My neighborhood has had quite a few vehicle thefts lately, so I decided to bring it to my parents' house, where there's a spacious garage and a quieter neighborhood. Even though my relationship with my parents has never been very close, I still trusted they would keep that precious keepsake safe. That night, when I was driving the jeepney home, Dad was standing in the yard mowing the lawn. When he saw the vehicle, his eyes lit up. He touched the side of the jeepney and said, "It's beautiful, Isabella. If your grandpa were still alive, he would be so proud." I smiled, feeling somewhat reassured. Mom came out of the house, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. "Isabella, you're home. Are you staying for dinner?" I nodded, then carefully guided the jeepney into the garage. Before closing the door, I reminded them again, "Dad, Mom, please remember this well. This vehicle is very special. Just start the engine for 15 minutes each week. But please don't drive it on the road. The insurance is complicated, and don't forget to cover it with this tarp." Dad frowned a little. "Do you think I don't know how to take care of a vehicle?" I forced a smile. "I'm just worried because this means the world to me." That dinner included Clarice, my sister. She had just graduated from college and was working for a small advertising company in Makati. Unlike me, Clarice dressed neatly, wore bright makeup, and spoke softly and delicately. Throughout the meal, she kept complaining about her job. "It's so stressful, sis. All my friends are getting ready to go on a cruise in Palawan this summer. But me, my salary is low. Not enough money. Life is so unfair." Clarice rested her chin on her hand, her voice full of frustration. I quietly picked at my food, saying nothing. In my mind, I remembered my college days when I had to work 3 jobs just to get by and never once complained. But Mom immediately turned to comfort her. Anik, don't be sad. Maybe your dad will figure something out. You deserve to rest and enjoy your youth. Dad was silent, only quietly saying, Money is tight because we're fixing the kitchen. We'll deal with that later. I bit my lip, trying to hold back my annoyance. Once again, I saw the clear favoritism. I went on a business trip for 3 weeks, focusing on my career. Clarice only dreamed of a fancy vacation, and my parents, like so many times before, clearly sided with her. At that moment, I never thought that simple dinner would be the start of a tragedy. I never expected that my mom saying, family helps family, would become the excuse for them to do something so terrible. That night, before heading back to the apartment, I told Miguel, tomorrow, please drop by my parents' garage. If anything seems off, please help me check it. He nodded, gently squeezing my hand. Don't worry, Isabella. Focus on your work. I'll keep an eye on it. I smiled, not knowing that things were about to spiral out of control. 3 weeks of business trips in Singapore went by faster than I expected. During the day, I was busy with tense meetings with partners. At night, I buried myself in my laptop editing reports. The work was demanding, but also exciting. It was the first time I stood before major investors, presenting and coordinating a project myself. I knew that if I succeeded, my career would take a whole new turn. Yet, amidst all the chaos, my heart sometimes still turned toward Manila, toward the red jeepney sitting in my parents' garage. I remembered the feeling of touching the steering wheel, hearing the engine start up every morning. To me, it was a part of memories tied to my grandfather, and the result of many years of hard work. In the beginning, messages from my parents were normal, asking about work, reminding me to eat well. But by the second week, my mom's tone in her messages started to change. One day, she wrote, "We have a big surprise for you when you get home." I was a bit surprised. My parents usually didn't prepare surprises for me. That was usually reserved for Clarice. I comforted myself, thinking maybe they wanted to do something to support me after this important trip. But inside, a growing sense of unease kept building. One evening, when I had some free time, I opened Instagram. Clarice's profile was the first to appear. My heart stopped when I saw her latest photos. Clarice was posing by the pool of a luxury resort in Palawan. She held a cocktail glass, wore a wide-brimmed hat, red lipstick, and a bright smile. Her caption read, "Living my best life. Salamat. Universe." I scrolled down, seeing even more photos. Clarice sat on the boat's deck, with the clear blue waters of El Nido behind her. Then photos at the spa, dining on high-end seafood, wearing an evening gown at a fancy party. I frowned. Where did she get the money to go to these places? I clearly remember just weeks ago she was complaining at the family dinner that her salary wasn't enough, that life was unfair. The question kept running through my mind. Where did she get the money? I tried to focus on work, but each photo felt like a needle stabbing my brain. Miguel called me on video from Manila, asking how things were going. I blurted out, "I saw Clarice went to Palawan. Do you know where she got the money?" Miguel shook his head. "I'm not sure either. But I did notice your parents seemed pretty busy lately." I didn't want to think about it more, telling myself maybe she borrowed from friends or someone else sponsored her. Finally, 3 weeks came to an end. The contract in Singapore was successfully signed. The company promised to consider promoting me. On the flight back to Manila, I sat by the window, my heart filled with happiness. I had made it. I dreamed of the moment I'd return home, open the garage door, see the bright red jeepney sitting there, then drive it along Roxas Avenue, letting the sea breeze hit my face. The taxi stopped in front of my parents' house on a sunny afternoon. I pulled my suitcase, heart pounding. The garage door opened. But there was nothing, just an empty, cold space, with only my dad's old sedan and my mom's SUV inside. The jeepney was no longer there. I froze. Sweat broke out on my forehead, even though it wasn't hot. My hand trembled as I placed it on the doorframe. A wave of panic rose in my chest. I turned to look at my mom, who had just appeared behind the house door. "Mom, where is my jeepney?" My voice was hoarse. She didn't answer right away. She glanced at Dad, and then smiled a strange, proud smile. She spoke slowly. each word cutting like a knife. Thanks to your jeepney, my child. Because of that vehicle, our Clarice could live her best days. I couldn't believe my ears. What do you mean? Where is my jeepney? Dad put the newspaper down, avoiding my gaze. He cleared his throat. Someone who collects wants to buy it. You know, Clarice has been really down. Her friends all went to Palawan, but she didn't have the money. Mom and Dad couldn't bear to see her suffer. So, we decided to sell the jeepney. The whole room spun before my eyes. I felt like the floor was collapsing beneath me. My heart pounded wildly in my chest. Every vein stretched tight. I shouted, "Sell it? That's my property. It's Lolo's keepsake." Mom folded her arms, her eyes cold. "Don't overreact, Isabella. You earn good money. You can buy another one." But the chance for Clarice to take a break, connect, and find joy again only comes once in a lifetime. I laughed bitterly, a mix of despair and sarcasm. I've worked 70 hours a week for years, saving every peso. To me, that vehicle isn't just an object. It's faith, blood, and Lolo's love. And you're selling it just for a few weeks of Clarice's fun? Mom's voice hardened. Family helps family. You have to understand that. If your sister needs it, we must sacrifice. You're the older sister. You have to be the one to give in. In that moment, I realized all my love, effort, and sacrifices over the years meant nothing to them. Clarice just had to complain once, and Mom and Dad were ready to crush my dream. I stood there, stunned, feeling a mix of pain and rising anger. And I knew this was just the beginning of a big storm. "It's not just a vehicle," I shouted, my voice shaking but full of anger. "It's Lolo's memory, the result of 5 years of me working myself to exhaustion. It's not something you can just sell whenever you want." My parents were silent for a few seconds. Then Mom crossed her arms and looked right at me with a reproachful stare. "Isabella, you're always too attached to material things. Don't you see your sister needs happiness? She's been stressed all year. This is her chance to find her spirit again, to regain balance in life." "Stressed?" I sneered, tears welling up at the corners of my eyes. "While I have to work 12 hours a day, 70 hours a week, eat cold-packed meals, give up friends, give up my youth, just to save every peso. Do you know what kept me going on those nights when I came home to my rented room, so exhausted I could barely stand? It was the jeepney. It was Lolo's promise to me. And now, you sold it so Clarice could drink cocktails in Palawan." Clarice, stepping out of the living room, hair down, phone in hand, she lifted her head, speaking casually. "You're overreacting. It's just a vehicle. You have a good job, a high salary, you can buy it back any time. And I don't always get the chance to go on cruises with my friends." I snapped at her, my eyes blazing. "You worked hard, sacrificed your youth to keep that jeepney. You know what it means to you, yet you happily enjoy the trip, knowing it was all paid for with your sweat and tears." Clarice shrugged, her eyes daring. "Family helps family. Mom and Dad are right. You always think about yourself, about your dream. But what about me? I deserve happiness too," my father interrupted, his voice low. "You need to understand, Isabella. You're strong, independent. But Clarice is different. She's sensitive, fragile. Without this trip, she would break down. We can't let that happen." My chest tightened. Breathing heavy, I felt like I was backed into a corner, standing against my whole family. In their eyes, my efforts, my sweat meant nothing. I bit my lip until it bled, voice trembling. "What about me? Who thinks about me? Who worries about my feelings?" No one answered. The room fell silent except for my choked sobs. I felt like the whole world had turned its back on me. But just when I thought everything had completely fallen apart, my phone vibrated. A message from Miguel. "I'm at your garage. Your jeepney is still safe." I read it over and over, my heart stopping. I immediately called him. Miguel's calm but firm voice came through. "Isabella, don't panic. I followed the plan we discussed before you left. I drove the real jeepney back to my warehouse, and the replica is kept at your parents' house. Your jeepney is still intact. No one could touch it." I was speechless. So, they didn't manage to sell the real jeepney. What they sold was just a copy that Miguel bought for us to use as a safe shield. A jeepney modified to look exactly the same, but worth only a small fraction of the original. I took a deep breath, wiped my tears, then looked up at my parents. You think you betrayed me, stole everything from me, but the truth is, you only sold a replica. My real jeepney is still here. And this truth shows one thing. I was right not to fully trust you. My mother's face turned pale. She stammered. You mean the real jeepney is still somewhere? Of course, Miguel stepped in, as if he had been waiting outside. He stood beside me, his cold eyes fixed on my parents. The real jeepney is with me, safely kept. What you sold was just the replica. And that means you just committed the crime of selling property that doesn't belong to you. My parents looked at each other, their faces drained of blood. Clarice was stunned. The phone in her hand dropped to the floor. Inside me, the pain lingered. The anger hadn't faded. But at the same time, a wave of calm washed over me. I had lost faith in them, but at least Lolo's keepsake was safe. I looked straight at my parents, my voice lowered but icy. You didn't just betray me. You betrayed this whole family. Because Lolo always said, the jeepney is the soul, the pride. And you were ready to sell that soul just to buy Clarice a fleeting pleasure. This isn't just about money. This is betrayal. The room fell into an unprecedented heaviness. No one said another word. But I knew, from this moment on, nothing would ever be the same. That night, before I could even recover from the intense confrontation, my father's phone rang. He picked up, and just seconds later, his face turned pale. From the speaker, a strange man's voice rang out coldly. Sir, about the jeepney you sold. The papers are fake. The VIN number doesn't match. If you don't return the money, I'll see you in court. Dad trembled. Mom stepped closer, her face turning pale. My God, if they sue, we could go to jail. Clarice also turned pale, her voice cracking. Mom, Dad, what's happening? They can't put us in jail, right? I stood still, my heart pounding in my chest. Every word in that call felt like a knife, stabbing into an already heavy silence. Miguel stayed calm. He crossed his arms, looking at my parents. This is the consequence when you deliberately sell something that isn't yours. The buyer has every right to sue for property fraud. If this goes to court, jail time is real, not just a threat. My mom broke down crying. Isabella, you have to help us. You know the law. You work in Makati. You can explain it to them. If you don't, this family will fall apart. I was stunned. A part of me screamed, let them pay. Let justice speak, because they betrayed trust, betrayed the love I had for Lolo. But another part trembled. There's still Mom and Dad. If they go to jail, the family's honor will be destroyed. How could I look neighbors and colleagues in the eye? Clarice hugged me tightly, her voice shaking. 8, please. If this goes public, I'll be ruined. Friends, colleagues, everyone will know. 8, don't destroy our family. I looked away, unable to face my sister. Inside me, a battle was raging. Justice or filial duty? Truth or honor? Miguel looked at me, his eyes firm but compassionate. Isabella, this is your moment to choose. If you stay silent, the buyer will keep threatening. If you speak up, at least everything will be clear. But this decision, only you can make. The room felt suffocating. I saw Dad's eyes, Mom's eyes, Clarice's eyes full of fear and pleading. But deep in my heart, the image of Lolo appeared, his hunched figure fixing the jeepney, hands covered in grease, yet always resting on my shoulder with reminders. Anik, always choose what's right, even if it hurts you. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my skin. Tears streamed down my face, not from weakness, but from the heavy inner turmoil. I turned to the audience in my mind, wanting to share this burden. If you were me, what would you do? Would you let justice speak? Or protect your family, even if they betrayed you? Comment below. I want to hear your thoughts. The phone rang as the atmosphere at home thickened, about to burst. Mom shakily picked up, and immediately Tita Rosario's voice came through the line, sharp and full of anger. Isabella, how could you do this to your own parents? Over just a Jeep? Do you realize how much shame you're bringing to our family? Mom put the call on speaker, Every accusation poured into my ears. My heart felt crushed. Tita Rosario continued, "Family comes first. Always. You can earn money again, buy another car, but you only have one mother, one father. Are you going to destroy them over some rusty Jeep?" My mom's tears fell heavily, fueled by her sister's words. She shouted, "Do you hear me, Isabella? Even your Tita understands. Family is everything." I clenched my hands, voice trembling. "Tita, it was not just a car. It was Lolo's Jeep. His blood, sweat, and memories. And it was my 5 years of sacrifice." But before I could finish, voices of relatives started outside the gate. My cousins had heard the news. They came one by one, like they wanted to witness a family trial. One cousin pointed at me. "8, stop acting selfish. Clarice is the youngest. She deserves support. Family helps family. Why are you turning this into a scandal?" Another cousin bitterly said, "People will laugh at us. The little sister wants to enjoy a bit of luxury cruising. What's wrong with that? Why would 8 report her own parents?" I backed away, like an animal cornered against the wall. All eyes were on me, accusing, condemning. No one listens to my heart breaking. Then, from the back row, a voice spoke up, slow but firm. "Enough." The whole room fell silent. I looked up. It was Uncle Ernesto, Lolo's only living brother. His hair was silver, his frame thin, but his eyes burned bright like fire. He looked around at everyone, then stopped at me. "Boundaries matter. Your Lolo would be ashamed to see this family forcing Isabella to betray her own values," everyone murmured. Tita Rosario fired back. "Kuya Ernesto, this is not about boundaries. This is about family unity. We survive together or fall apart together." But Ernesto just shook his head, his voice like a hammer striking a wall of lies. Unity built on betrayal is not unity. It is slavery. If family means forcing one child to sacrifice everything so another can live in luxury, then that is not family. That is injustice. My heart trembled. Tears fell, not from pain, but because for the first time, someone understood me, stood by me. But Ernesto's words only made the relatives angrier. Someone shouted loudly, "So now you're against us too? Even you, Ernesto, are dividing the family." The atmosphere exploded. My mother collapsed, clutching her chest, crying uncontrollably. My father's face turned red as he slammed his hand on the table. "Isabella, enough. You are tearing this family apart. If you really love us, drop this now. Apologize to your sister, and let's move on." I bit my lip hard, blood oozing out, but I didn't back down. I looked straight at my parents, at the whole family standing like a wall opposing me. Family isn't about blind obedience. Family is about respect. If you can't respect me, my boundaries, and Lolo's memory, then maybe this family has already fallen apart. The room went silent. My words echoed, like a death knell, for the fragile bond built only on favoritism and oppression. At that moment, I knew this wasn't just about a jeepney. This was a battle to reclaim the right to be myself in a family that always put Clarice above everything else. I turned to the audience in my mind. If your whole family stands against you, would you choose to stay silent for peace or stand up for the truth, even if you're all alone? Comment below. I want to hear your heart. On a hot afternoon in Makati, Isabella sat with Miguel in the lawyer's office. A thick file lay on the table, each page feeling like a ton on her shoulders. The lawyer looked straight into Isabella's eyes, speaking slowly but firmly. "Anik, now there are only 2 paths. One is to sue and let the court decide. The other is a civil settlement, forcing them to return the money and take public responsibility." Isabella took a deep breath. In her head echoed the words of Tita Rosario, her parents, and all the relatives. Family comes first. But she knew, if she backed down this time, all boundaries would disappear. This wasn't just about the jeepney, but about her future, about justice in her own family story. Miguel placed his hand over hers, whispering, "You are not alone. Whatever you choose, I'm with you." The next day, Isabella and Miguel returned to the old house in Manila. At the dining table, her parents and Clarice were already waiting. The tension was so thick you could hear the ticking of the wall clock. Isabella spoke first. "I've talked to the lawyer. There are 2 options. One is to have the police investigate, and let the court decide. The other is to settle within the family, with a written civil agreement. Her father slammed the table. "Anik, why are you doing this? We are your family," Miguel interrupted, his voice controlled but firm. "Family doesn't mean you can do whatever you want. This is a legal matter. If it's not resolved, the consequences will be worse." Isabella pulled out the papers, spreading them flat on the table. "The condition is, Mom, Dad, and Clarice must return the full 3 million peso, equivalent to 50,000 US dollars, and issue a public apology, clarifying that selling the jeepney was wrong, and without my consent." Her mother burst into tears. "Thank you. Isabella, we only want the kids to be happy." Clarice also cried out, her voice high-pitched. "Why am I punished? I didn't sell the car. It wasn't my signature." Isabella stared straight at her sister, eyes blazing. "Yes, it wasn't your signature, but you were the one manipulating them. You were the one crying, demanding, turning love into a burden. That's not love. That's selfishness. In this revenge story, no one but you has to face the truth." The whole room fell silent. Clarice choked back tears, sobbing uncontrollably. Her father bowed his head, while her mother shakily took off each gold bracelet from her wrists. Finally, the parents agreed to sell the jewelry they had saved up for many years. Her father took out another loan from the bank. Clarice, through tears, reluctantly transferred 200,000 pesos from her savings account. When he signed the apology letter, his hand trembled so much, the writing was nearly crooked. He looked at Isabella, eyes red-rimmed. "Anik, forgive us. We never thought it would come to this." Isabella gripped the pen tightly in her hand. Her heart ached, but at the same time, she felt relief. For the first time in her life, she felt heard and respected. She nodded softly. "Mom, Dad, I will forgive you. But remember, family love isn't about taking from one person to give to another. Love must go hand in hand with fairness." In the months after the agreement, Isabella's family began to change. On Sunday mornings, the sound of the jeepney engine in the garage became a familiar tune. This time, it wasn't just Isabella crouching under the vehicle. Her father, the one who had once silently been complicit, asked to learn alongside her. He wiped his hands on an oily rag, forcing a smile. "Anik, teach me. Maybe it's not too late to understand what Lolo Ernesto once taught you." It was the first time Isabella felt a new bond with her father, not through money, but sweat and learning. Her mother changed too. One afternoon, she gave Miguel a small wooden frame holding a carefully framed copy of the apology letter. The words stood out in the middle of the page. "Boundaries matter. Respect is love." Her mother softly said, "I hope this will remind us all that love without respect is not love at all." Clarice no longer depended on others like before. She started working properly at a design company in Cebu, earning her first salary through her own hard work. For the first time in her life, Isabella's younger sister learned to grow up, understanding she couldn't live forever on others' sacrifices. Isabella looked back on everything that had happened. She understands that this family story isn't just about a jeepney or betrayal. It's a story about boundaries, about having the courage to say no when needed, and about responsible love. She concluded during a sharing session with friends, standing up for yourself doesn't mean betraying family. It means teaching them love with respect. True love doesn't hurt anyone. It teaches each other how to grow. Have you ever been betrayed by your family in the name of helping? Would you forgive them? Thank you for watching until the end of the story on Crying Inside, where every family story matters. If you've ever cried quietly after a smile, remember, you are never alone. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss stories that touch the heart, and so we can find strength together in our tears.